Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Upgrading to ASCP. Today is November 11th, 2015. My name is Christina Bergman. I will be facilitating today's event. On this Veterans Day, we'd like to acknowledge and honor those who have served in the United States military. Presenting with us today, we have Jim Hetherington, Dwayne Hardacre, Kurt McKinney, and our special guest, Ed Hayek, Solutions Consultant with Oracle. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. Everyone has joined us in listening only mode as this presentation is being recorded. You will have the opportunity to submit questions to today's presenters by typing your questions into the questions pane on the control panel. So we encourage you to send your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect and answer them via email. We also have a few announcements that we'll go through at the end. We're going to talk about our free Avada ASCP upgrade consultation. And just a reminder, we have our next webinar. That is ASCP Demantra Health Checks, and we'll have more information about that in a minute. I'd like to welcome Jim Hetherington.
Thanks, Christina. A couple points. I just want to review the agenda, and we're going to be basically looking at two things today. We are going to focus on the enhancements of 12.2.5, but we're going to go back and give a bit of historical release genealogy to the product so that, regardless of where you are in terms of what version you're using, you can put in context where you are as compared to some of the enhancements over time. And then we will be looking at ASCP 12.2.5. And again, thank you to Oracle for joining us today. In our opinion, the step change in the user experience that's been made here with 12.2.5 is probably the most significant single improvement to a user interface that we've seen in this Oracle supply chain planning products ever. So we look forward to that, and we'll wrap up with a bit on our upgrade approach and how we look at these things. I've got one slide here on Avada, and really there's just one ask I'd have for people to when you think about Avada, and that is that supply chain planning and the Oracle tools that support planning, that's all we do. So whether it's implementing these tools, supporting them over time, or hosting them in the cloud, our expertise means we get you there faster with solutions that fit the way you work. And on this point, I like to say it's a fine line between a software solution being used by the team or users backsliding into spreadsheets. And our focus at Avada on supply chain planning means we bring domain expertise to the table that tightens the fit between data, software, and your business processes that puts you on the right side of that line. So with that, I'd like to introduce Dwayne Hardacre, a partner here with Avada, to take it from there.
Thanks, Jim. And boy, that was well said, and that dovetails real good into the common challenges over the years we've experienced with ASCP, whether that's our implementations or oftentimes brought in after the fact an implementation was already done. One of the most common challenges is usability. While the new ASCP 12.2.5 has a massive impact on this, the reality is putting in software and configuring buttons is a long way short of understanding what your business objectives were, what kind of supply chain model you were in, and oftentimes an organization may have multiple supply chain models within their organization, and what does that process look like within ASCP? Again, it's amazing to me, just recently we took over an ASCP implementation, and the users did not know the monthly, weekly, daily planning cadence and what they did in ASCP in each one of those different planning cadences, nor how to do the exception management. And this was just recently, but this happens all the time. If you're going into ASCP today and you're looking at a default screen, no one should ever be looking at a default screen. Every form, every flow in there should be tailored to your process, but not just your process as it exists today. It should be challenged to make sure it's the right process. It's the right supply chain process to meet your business objectives. And then, of course, what's the first thing cut out of many budgets? Education and training. We see this all the time. You look at training material, and it's the points and clicks of what I need to do, but the education, the context of it is missing. The understanding the roadmap and how this piece is going to work into the next piece is missing. Or even we've gone in and users have said, hey, I'm trying to figure out this business problem in ASCP, and the answer was simply, well, did you look over in this form over here? And the answer was, no, I didn't know that form existed. Again, these things happen all the time on the usability. Complexity is another area. ASCP is a pretty advanced math model, especially when you start layering in constraints. What we often find is people aren't understanding the true business implications of the decisions they're making when implementing ASCP. And we have seen massive inventory and delivery impacts because a constraint was layered in and the planners did not know how that really impacted the output of the plan. And oftentimes you don't until you drive this in production for a while. So, in reality, it should be a step function. No matter how smart the planning organization is, no matter how complex one thinks their planning model is, design it for the end state, but make it a step function, a committed evolution to get to that complexity, because you will uncover things along the way. And I'm 100% guarantee in a lot of cases you will change course based on what you found out after you went live and really drove this in production. Data is obviously, probably the number one, killer of valid plan outputs. There's a massive amount of data that has to happen, be input into ASCP correctly. To implement ASCP and to even do it within the context properly of the process and do the education and training properly is still not enough to put in a proper planning solution. If you're not addressing the upstream data management processes and controls, then you haven't looked at it holistically. So with that, I'm going to add a shameless plug for a tool we built because we found this as such a pain point over the years. This is the Data Control Center. And what this allows you to do is, it's a tool we built that sits on top of ASCP and Demantra and Snow and PS. And it reads in all that data that's being collected, and it does sanity checks. Are you missing lead times? Are your lead times make sense? Does the math make sense before you put it into the plan? Are you missing planner codes? Did you create a new item that doesn't have a valid routing? Is the routing incomplete? As well as a bunch of other kind of analytic things as well around that. But again, addressing the data up front is an issue and will always be an issue. There is no easy answer, shortcut for that. So I'm going to quickly go over the ASCP release genealogy. And as Jim had said, why this is important is it's not just enough for you to know what you're landing on in 12.2.5. As amazing as 12.2.5 is, you're also getting all the incremental enhancements that have been done over the last 7 years. So it's important that you know those because you're going to get all of those and understand which ones are applicable to your business. So 12.1.1, in R12, they were big on introducing distribution requirements planning, as well as making a lot of functionality available for pharmaceutical and process manufacturing. In particular, the introduction of minimum shelf life requirements, and that has been enhanced and improved over multiple releases that you'll see highlighted here. 12.1.2, internal requisitions, internal sales orders. This was a personal pain point for me years ago. It was actually impossible to manage internal requisitions within the workbench. So this is a really awesome new feature. And the consumed purchase orders on FIFO sequence, again, makes a lot of sense. Will have a definite impact to the business. Another good one. 12.1.3, substitute components. Some really good enhancement that Kurt's going to talk about in detail. 12.1.3, and then some of the sub-releases. This was really big on introducing into some of the new industries around complex maintenance repair orders and asset-intensive planning. So that brought in a lot of enhancements as well as integrations into things like Primavera and stuff for that. It also actually there's a lot of great things in this release. It also introduced the integration to rapid planning, which Kurt's going to talk about as well, and the new material and resource plan, which you think it's good here, it gets even better at 12.2.5. And then the post-processing lead time for make orders. You know, that's such a simple one that, you know, you think, wow, really? But this was the one that not only caused, another one that caused me issues over the years, but several of our clients, because there was no simple way to model the time from work order completion to the time it actually got put away at the warehouse and ready for pick, pack, and ship. That could have been a quality check. That could have been, you know, just, you know, in transit time, a small movement time to move it over to the warehouse. And trying to model this, and the workaround was model it in the routing. And that had a whole slew of challenges with that. So this was a nice, this seems little when you look at it in the context of everything, but boy, that had some serious impacts. 12.2, exception management got improved, and largely around the fact that not all exceptions apply to all people and all organizations. So what you could do is really only turn on those exceptions that made sense to you, so you didn't have to inundate the plan with a bunch of extraneous ones. And it also helped, you know, save with plan runtimes. 12.2.4 had some really good things around constraints, around resource, premium resource capacity and warehouse constraints. Again, some good business functionality and impact there. And then 12.2.5, again, I don't want to steal anyone's thunder. You know, Ed's going to, you know, walk through that with us. But in addition to the entirely new face of ASCP and forms and all, you know, and views and all that, there is some functionality that has been added that's really maximize resource, and the ability to pull forward demand and level load your factory is massive. Another one that many of our clients have had a challenge with and struggled over the years. And then purchasing integration enhancements is another big one as well that has been asked for. The one, you know, point of note is if you're looking to go to 12.2.5, it is certified against these EBS and JD Edwards versions. Does that mean if you're 11.5.10, you're out in the cold? No, because of Avada's, you know, focus in this area and our strategic relationship with Oracle over the years in development, you know, we can get you there. It does take a little bit of extra work. We have done this in the past. So again, it doesn't mean you're out. But those of you that are in the certified versions, I would strongly take a look at all this stuff and see if it makes sense. With that, I'm going to hand it over to a friend of mine and a guy that I worked with both back in industry and in consulting, and to me, one of the best supply chain planning guys out there, Kurt McKinney.
Thanks, Dwayne. As soon as I get the slide presentation mode here, I'll get going.
You should be good to go.
And hopefully you guys can now see my screen. And I'll put it in slideshow mode. All right, so we're ready to roll here. So I wanted to kind of break this into two chunks. You know, what were the key deliverables in the 12.1 release? And then also what the key deliverables or noteworthy events in the 12.2 release. So jumping into 12.1, this is where they introduced remaining shelf life, which really is quite critical to pharmaceutical, process industry, anything that ultimately goes bad at some point in its product life cycle. The challenge that clients had before this was available is they were trying to juggle the effectivity date and shipping it to the client or to the channel, you know, a year prior to the end date of a product, expiration date, sorry, of a product, and it was quite challenging. now you have the ability to, at a customer level or at a supply chain echelon level, say how much shelf life needs to remain on the product in order for it to be eligible for shipment, whether it be shipment to another distribution channel within your distribution network or to a direct customer. So this has really been a huge benefit to some clients that we have, not only in the pharmaceutical but in the vitamin industry. And just a note, this needs to be run in constraint without detailed scheduling mode to enable this. And so I just wanted to spend a moment on that because you'll see that come up in a couple of scenarios that we go through. So constrained without detailed scheduling, in effect, puts the planning at a day level as opposed to an hour or minute granularity. And it somewhat changes the pegging that happens within the plan, simplifies the pegging a bit, but wherever you see this caution for constrained without detailed scheduling, what you're really getting is key functionality that having less detail in the pegging is a fair trade-off for the benefit that you're getting for the functionality that's being implemented. So end item substitution is available also within 12.1 release, and it will allow you to control whether you use the primary or the substitute. We'll actually touch on that a little bit later as well. But this is from an end item level. There's also some improved functionality for substitution logic at a component of a bill of material level that we'll dive into. So in end item substitution, you can end up having a chain. You know, B reports substitutes to A and C substitutes to B. And prior to this enhancement, Oracle would then make the assumption that C is a substitute for A, which is not always the case. So you now have the ability to break that chain and not have Oracle not infer that relationship. You can do it with or without, but now you have some control. This particular one, you have to be on at least 12.1 on the EBS side for it to function. So consuming purchase orders in a FIFO sequence, this really becomes quite an issue in reality in production environments without this. If you look at the default functionality pane here, with a demand on Friday for 100 and a PO 100 on Monday, 100 on Thursday, the pegging is going to peg to the 100 on Thursday by standard functionality. And as a result, I'm sorry, it would peg to Monday. So when it recommends a cancellation, it would recommend you cancel the Monday purchase order, which from a true planning perspective, it probably doesn't make sense to cancel the purchase order that has the earliest delivery. It would be the one that has the furthest out delivery that you can use to fulfill your demand. So this new functionality allows you to control that, and with it enabled, it would now recommend the cancellation of the Thursday PO versus the Monday in the prior behavior. There's quite a few options around forecast spreading. Historically, you've been able to spread just on your manufacturing calendar in the given organization. And so the examples that we're showing here, if you've got a 480 unit demand and you work Monday through Friday, it would spread at 24 per day. Pretty straightforward logic. If you then said, well, you know, I ship 6 days a week and I want to spread the forecast based on my shipping rather than my manufacturing, it would then break it down to 20 per day. But then it would look at that 20 on Saturday and say, you know, that's not a manufacturing day. So I've got to pull that requirement into Friday. So now from a manufacturing perspective, you've got a plan that's 20 per day, Monday through Thursday, and then 40 on Friday. There must be clients out there that would like that behavior because Oracle's given the functionality. My preference as a planner would always be to have a level load against the manufacturing org. But you know, if this is not a manufacturing organization and you can get supplier deliveries on Friday of 40 so that you can ship 20 on Friday and 20 on Saturday, then this logic may make sense. And you can also do a user-defined calendar. So some clients would like to be able to have all of their inventory available on Monday to support the entire week's shipment forecast, in which case you could create a user-defined calendar with only Mondays. And then your monthly forecast would split into 4 or 5 buckets, depending on how many Mondays there were in the week, and drop that forecast on Monday. And ASCP would then plan the supply to support that. So this one here is substitute at the component level. So the current functionality prior to this enhancement was to always look at the primary and use your primary on hand or scheduled receipts first, and then look at substitutes if you don't have any of those, prior to then going and creating new planned orders for the primary, and then subsequently the substitutes. With the enhancement, you can flip that, and you can say, I want to use substitutes first, and then go to the primary. So where I see a huge benefit around this in the clients that we've implemented this is if you're doing a phase-in ECO, you can put the substitute on the bill of material, the new part, the primary, and you can then drive the behavior to use up all of the substitute component supply, which will then drive you to the primary. And we also talked earlier about, or we will talk about the ability to stop planned order creation on certain items. So if you said don't create planned orders on substitutes, you would then fully consume your current part number and switch over to primary. And point 4 at the bottom of the slide, it would never generate those planned orders for substitutes if you're trying to do a phase-in ECO approach. Again, this is in constrained plan without detailed scheduling, but if you have this requirement, that certainly can be well worth the trade-off there. So for those of you that have ASCP and either have rapid planning or are thinking about rapid planning, the integration is there to allow you to take an ASCP plan, bring it over to rapid planning, do simulations. You know, you've got a machine down, you've got a large order requirement, a supplier suddenly has a fire in their factory, you're not going to be able to get components for 2 weeks, whatever the scenario might be, and model it very quickly in rapid planning. And based on your findings in rapid planning, you can do one of 2 things. You can release those recommendations to ASCP, to EBS directly, or you can just integrate that rapid plan result back to ASCP, so your subsequent ASCP plan factors in the changes that you've simulated in rapid planning. So it's a pretty powerful full cycle what if scenario capability with rapid planning on top of ASCP. So in 12.1, they did introduce the new material and resource plan. As we indicated earlier, if you're considering going straight to 12.2.5 and you have not enabled this yet, 12.2.5 is probably even better. But at this point in 12.1, you've got the ability to start grouping things by item categories, getting totals, like total planned orders, total supply, things of that nature. And within a category, you can actually do overrides at the total level. So if you had, for example, a category with 5 items in it, each one having a planned order for 100, and your total rolled up to 500, you can now change that 500 to 1,000, and every single planned order will end up being 200 and firmed, so that you've made a manual decision to override the supply plan in that case, and your subsequent ASCP plan runs would honor that change that you had made at an aggregated level. Base functionality would just proportion it based on the planned orders that roll up to that, but there are some other options on how you can have that that proportioning blow down to the individual items within that category. And a resource plan also has the similar interface with totals, and it does give you the ability to edit available capacity and have that available capacity honored in your subsequent plan runs as well. So on the customized export to Excel, for me, the key thing here is that you can now start exporting pegging along with other data. To do that, historically, you would have had to have a custom query written by a developer to pull that data out. So it's putting more control in the planner's hands to be able to understand the detailed level of what the plan is doing. And these queries, if you would, can also be embedded within the plan so that when the plan runs, the results from all of these queries that you attach to the plan are immediately available for use. So noteworthy changes are the internal requisition to earn internal sales orders, that you can actually change quantities and dates, and it updates both ends of that relationship. Safety lead time, which will allow you to bring material in a stated number of days early, and the ability to add a custom row in the horizontal plan with a calculation embedded in it. Supply tolerance is really targeted towards the process industry. So if you need 10,000 pounds and you produce 9,900, you can configure it so it's not going to then generate a planned order for an additional 100 pounds. And I kind of touched on this planned order creation feature that you can turn off the creation of planned orders when it's appropriate. Distribution planning, it's just using order modifiers so that any transfers between distribution points now honor all of those order modifiers. And forecast explosion, many options. You can bring it up to APCC for analytics. You can explode it into Mantra, bring it into ASCP, or you can then publish it to ASCP from Demantra with percentages and do the explosion there in ASCP. And then post-processing, Dwayne touched on that earlier. I've had clients that have documentation requirements of having product ready 7 days prior to shipment for export documentation requirements. That's another case where this can really come in handy. And also you have the ability to see critical path now in an EDD plan. So from an integration perspective, really the takeaway from this slide is if you have multiple VCP instances, regardless of whether it's on one server or multiple servers, you can run a single collection. So all environments will have the same snapshot in time data, and it will also process those collections much more efficiently. You can also integrate production schedule output as an input to ASCP, and many integrations around the enterprise asset management and the maintenance repair orders to show up as resource constraints within ASCP for ASCP to plan around appropriate downtime for those activities. So on to 12.2, premium resource. To me, the easiest way to think about this one is think of it as overtime. So if you've got a 50% capacity percentage, premium capacity percentage, the plan will use that extra capacity and tell you that you've used it so that you can effectively plan for your manpower overtime to hit a given production schedule, assuming that manpower constraint is what you're modeling. Warehouse capacity constraints are just allowing you to not try to stuff too much material into your warehouse. It's going to look at your supply and demand and try to balance your inventory positions against a previously defined capacity. And that can be done either at the organization level or at the organization category level. So we do have the integration from Primavera project planning into ASCP, so you can now see the planned resources and materials for projects generated in Primavera in ASCP. And I'm just going to touch real briefly on some of the high points of 12.2.5 and hand it over to Ed so you can get a sneak peek of 12.2.5. So the maximum resource utilization, if you have a scenario where your capital equipment is really your key business driver, you always want to keep your capital equipment busy, or you've got a labor pool that's always working, and those take precedence over a lean inventory model. You'd rather build up inventory and have your assets or resources used effectively. This now gives you the capability to pull forward demand and load your resources to their maximum availability. So in the new ALTA GUI, as it's called, it's the interface looks noticeably different from ASCP that you see today, and these screenshots, these points on the screen here are just some of the things that will be different, and you'll see this in more detail in Ed's presentation. But as you can see, there's a lot of work areas that are impacted by 12.2.5. You also have the ability to start doing collections in different ways, filtering on categories as opposed to collecting the entire org. And some of the forecast processing options are now able to be controlled at an organization level, where historically it's only been at a plan level, and that's going to be huge. And then also project netting, you're able to see that netting in the plan itself, as well as seeing the reservation at the day level in the plan. And this last one here is, I would say, last but not least. I think this is huge, that you now, looking at a purchase order in ASCP, are able to select the firm flag and release that to EBS, and it will firm the purchase order in purchasing. That is a huge pain point today, because you have to drill about 5 screens down in EBS to firm a purchase order. Not only that, but if you do a reschedule out on a purchase order, you don't want to hold your supplier accountable to the original promise date, so you have the capability of removing that promise date from the supplier as you're doing a reschedule out, and basically make space for a new promise date that then they're held accountable from a supplier scorecard perspective. So I am going to hand it over to Ed here. And did that go to the right person? Ed, did you?
Oh.
Yep. Great.
A slight difference here. Just hold on. So thank you.
Go ahead, Ed. I'll control it.
Very good. Thank you, Dwayne. So, hello all. I'm very excited to be talking to you here today about this new advanced supply chain planning, particularly the user interface that we're going to show you today. We entitled the slide that you just saw "Sneak Peek," and with this version now generally available, I invite all customers and partners to download and take a look at this new interface personally and go and grab it down. What I wanted to start with was just a brief view of how Oracle has been working on this path, this user interface path. We've got some phenomenal leadership within the Oracle development team with a passion for enhancing the overall user experience with our applications. And in 12.2.5, what we have is I think a nice culmination of a lot of projects and programs, and in this case with this ALTA, as we called it, graphic user interface. What you'll see is how the user's life really changes according to some best practices and other customer feedbacks. The idea here is to make the supply chain planner's life easier and keep the work process, the daily, weekly, monthly, regular work processes more efficient and provide the information necessary to make what I like to call efficient and informed decisions for the planners. So the view you see now is really where we log into the system now. So where for those of you that might be on some older versions, in 12.2, we started going to a more graphical and icon-based login type screen. So here, the planner, as they start their day, would log into the system and start by clicking on that supply planning work area. Next slide, please. And after hitting that, welcome to the new face of advanced supply chain planning. Here, really, this kicks off, I think, a completely new user experience with the software. And in this case, what you see first are some key metrics, a high-level review of supply chain performance according to what the latest plan is saying. And so at the top, what you'll notice is a very different organization of the supply planner screen, and you'll see sort of right at the top here the different metrics, right, related to basically revenue metrics, demand fulfillment, and material shortages, resource utilization, and also some areas where alternate supplies might be used or alternate items. These are very configurable, and the users can have a list of items they can pick and choose for where they start their day here. Now, on this view that you see here, we can see on the resource utilization metric highlighted that we've got a resource constraint in this plan, and certainly that needs to be resolved. So what we want to look at next slide please, is sort of an impact from delivery standpoint. We see how on this screen, just by clicking into a different area, we can see how that resource constraint is causing, or will cause, I should say, some shortages and exceptions over the next couple months of the plan. So from here, what we can do is dig into some details and resolutions. So on the next slide, we'll start taking a look at how the user interface really works in this new layout and system. A couple things I want to point out is across the top, what we have now are some layout options and a way for planners to save and customize their own layouts. so they have some control over what they see or reference on a regular basis. And then, even more important, on the left-hand side, where you see the arrow, you can see a quick access to, first of all, the different plans in the system. And so number one, you can move between plans. So if you're doing what-if scenario planning, you can quickly leap from between one plan to the next plan and run some comparisons. Also, at the very top corner, you'll see a reference to the plan that we're looking at right now, basically in the top tab. The next thing I'll point out is a favorites area, and this is a designed to be an area for, again, sort of that what used to be the top 10 list, basically in the older interface. But this is where users can place quick links to the different types of queries or areas that they might take a look at on a regular basis. And then plan links, and this is really key to the new interface. It's something that after using this for a while now, I'm very happy with, is being able to quickly click on this left-hand link and get to your exceptions list, dig down into material plans and resource plans, and view both horizontal and vertical versions of the plan. And then also on the other part of this, we got the plan actions, right? So as the planner is going through their exceptions or going through their scenario planning, the quick actions of looking at the different plan options, launching the plan, basically releasing the plan, essentially, again, at the quick reference. And something that as you get access to viewing a system live, the thing that you'll notice is that as we go to different views, the left-hand bar and the top, the left-hand vertical bar and the top horizontal bar stay where they're at. And what we do is we change our tabbed view in the screen in the middle. So here what we're looking at is a summary of all items, basically, so you can see any of the item master details for all items in the plan, just sort of as a quick reference. What I want to do, though, is kind of dig into the material plan on some trouble items. So next slide, please. So in this view that you'll see, next slide, please, Dwayne. Dwayne, can you advance?
No, I'm having a technical difficulty here. I cannot. It froze up. My system, system froze up. Oh, there we go. I got it. It's back. Sorry about that.
Okay, hey, no problem. We'll get back to it. So what we got is starting to dig into the details and resolution. And what we see here is how by digging into the material plan link on the left-hand side, we now see that overall horizontal view of the plan. And really, just like in our prior view, basically, we can tailor this view for user preferences. And so next slide, please. So what we can do is tailor those views and have them available in a quick pull-up list. So in this case, next slide, we'll switch to a more summary view of this information, just to take a look at the overall heartbeat of this item and org combination. And so in this case, remember we're digging into a shortage situation. And so what we're going to do next is really take a look at some of the resources. And so if we go to the next slide, what we have here is, again, a quick link from the left-hand side, bringing us to the resource exceptions list. And here, really what we have is that a little bit more of a few more details around what resources are constrained and sort of the scope and size of the constraints or impact of those constraints. And so from here, once we see the summary view, by highlighting the line that we're looking at, the chip mount one highlighted in blue, we can then take a look at more details. And so go ahead, next slide. And so by right-clicking and looking at the resource plan itself, we're now digging right from that view directly into the resource plan. And in here, we know there's a resource issue basically. Really, what we're enabling is a process right now where say the planner can then call the plant manager, right, and talk about the possibility of working overtime. So we know the resource is overloaded, it's causing exceptions. One potential solution, right, is to declare or try to work some overtime over the weekend or late night shifts. Now, to do that, just like you've seen in ADF forms, basically, we can click within those available hours, basically, and alter the plan right here. So if we want to work, say, 10% or 20% overtime, we can actually enter that right here within the screen and rerun the plan, and then double check the exceptions. So let's go ahead and go to the exceptions view on the next slide, and then come back to this exceptions view and work on the next one, right? So really, what we just kind of went through was how quick and easy figuring out where the exception is, coming up with a plan to resolve the exception, and then entering into the system the solution to that exception. Rerun the plan, and now we're back to our exceptions list, or we're just knocking exceptions off the list as we go, basically. So a few simple clicks, and we're back to our exceptions list. And here, what I want to do is kind of go through a little bit of the exceptions view and some of the new features within this view. And in the prior versions and prior system, there was a lot of back and forth between pop-up windows. You go to the exceptions view, you bring up another pop-up to look at maybe some details. Maybe underneath you look at some pegging views, and a lot of clicking, copying, and pasting, basically, to dig to the bottom of an issue. Here, in one view, just one view, we can have our exceptions list, right? We've got our specific exceptions in the top half of the list. And then in the bottom half of this window, again, this is brand new. Bottom half of the window, we have the pegging and detailed information. So we have our supply, demand, or vertical plan view in the bottom half of the window, including the pegging information. And really here, what we can look at is not only dig into the details of the exceptions, right, and possibly, and just like we did in the prior versions, right, you can firm, alt change, and mark for release any item, PO, or line, basically, right from here. Now, within the pegging information, go back, stay there. Within the pegging information that you see in the bottom half of the screen, as that pegging information is dig further into, if you notice, you can now look at and firm and do those actions under the pegging information underneath as well. And so really, with those embedded windows and that extra pegging information at your fingertips, this really, really can help make the supply chain planner's day much more efficient, and make the usability here, I think, leaps and bounds forward. So then, the next view, what I wanted to dig into was just showing how different plan actions, right, have the same look and feel. And so in digging here into the plan options, this new user interface goes not only just for the daily metrics and working through exceptions list, but also as you're interacting with the plan itself, the plan actions, creating new plans, copying plans, launching plans, releasing plans. It's all in this new interface, and something that I think is easier to follow, easier to view and work with for the users. So the next slide. In summary, basically, really 12.251 is a huge leap forward in system usability. It really is a culmination of a number of years of development activity, and it brings the on-premise applications really into that similar user experience that we have in some of the newer cloud offering as well. And so really, as far as looking at a potential release to upgrade to 12.251 is certainly something that I think offers really a better user experience, a more efficient user experience, and can really what it means to the planner is more time spent on value-added activity, strategic activity, real process improvement type activity, because you've saved time in digging through your regular exceptions, basically, and the day-to-day type operation. Handing that time back to the planners to do something and impact the business a little bit better. So that's what I have today. Really, I want to thank Avada for giving the opportunity to kind of show this to a wider audience. And I'll turn the microphone back over here to Dwayne.
Thanks, Ed. I appreciate that. And just like I was saying earlier, you can't possibly test planning in a test environment and predict what's going to happen in real life. No matter how many times we did our test dry run, we couldn't predict these webinar technology issues. So perfect example, adapting as we go. So sorry about the glitches there. I'm not going to go through this slide. It's just for those of you who want to download it, this is all the 12.2.5 enhancements across the VCP footprint. I'm going to go fast in lieu of time. Our approach is pretty common sense. We will do an assessment, and then from there we will execute the upgrade and then test and migrate. And obviously we have an entire plan on how we go about that. And the key thing here is in the assessment, again, it's we want to understand your challenges, understand your objectives, and make sure we align and educate properly. One of the things we utilize is what we call our scope complexity matrix. This is something that we know exactly what things to ask for, so we would give this to you, and you would fill out the responses, and we have a formulaic way of determining, kind of scoring this and identifying the risk factor, and this helps us determine the level of effort for the upgrade in areas we need to, drill into. So, with that, help us, we're here available for you. With this consult, what we're offering is, we'll complete and review the complexity matrix, understand your solution pain points and objectives, and then identify the key areas of risk and benefits of the upgrade specific to you, right? Because there's, tremendous amount of new functionality and capability. Again, it's what applies to you, your industry, and your supply chain. And then, of course, give you the level of effort for the upgrade. I think in general, I know all of you want a number. I'm not going to give it to you, but I don't think the upgrade, especially those that are in a decentralized environment, is as mysterious or painful as you think. With that, I'm going to hand that back to Christina.
Thanks, Dwayne. If anyone has any questions regarding this presentation or the free consultation, any other ways we may assist you, there are many ways that we can have you connect with us listed here. We had a lot of great questions come in during the presentation. We will be answering those via email. And I'd like to thank Jim, Kurt, Dwayne, and Ed for presenting. So on behalf of Avada, thank you for joining us, and enjoy the rest of the day wherever you are.